On this week's Carrier App, we talk with Roger Entner from Recon Analytics about recent results from T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon, as well as a report he recently did for CTIA looking at the impact the wireless industry has on the overall American economy. Well, thanks for joining us in this week's Carrier App. I'm your host, Dan Meyer, Editor-in-Chief here at RCR Wireless News. And this week, we are pleased to be joined by Roger Entner, who's the founder and lead analyst at Recon Analytics, to talk a bit about the wireless space. Hey, Roger, again, thanks for joining us this week. We appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.
Good to have you as always. So, let's dig in first. We're already, I guess, a couple of carriers into the Q1 results. Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile have all announced their results so far. I guess looking at the picture, at kind of the overall picture there, before digging into each carrier, what's been your general view of, I guess, maybe growth in the market? I mean, it does seem like, we've always talked about in the past about wireless growth perhaps slowing, and I guess it's seemingly slow for some companies, but what's your overall view of kind of what's happened so far?
Well, I think we're seeing the trends materialize that we talked about for so long.
Yeah.
Overall, the trend is when we look at subscriptions, we're reaching population growth numbers.
Yeah.
2-3% a year. Everybody has a phone. Everybody wants to have a phone, so everybody gets a phone. The question is from who and which way. And T-Mobile is continuing to kick ass and take names.
Yeah.
They are doing extremely well. They're combining attractive offers, have created a very good public image, and it translates, and now executing extremely well. I've talked about it a lot of times, that whereas in the past there was less than perfect execution, now there's perfect execution. And you see it in the numbers, and well-deservedly so.
Sure.
Whereas Verizon and AT&T are starting to play a different game.
Yeah.
The paradox that I'm seeing is that the Un-carrier is becoming the most traditional carrier.
Don't let John Legere hear you say that, but you're right. You're right. It does seem like you're right. They are becoming the new carrier for people. Again, they're the traditional carrier. They're doing smartphones and prepaid and kind of what we expected from
wireless connectivity, and that's it. So they become the embodiment of the traditional carrier that we know in a nicer, kinder, more magenta way. But the traditional function is that of a wireless carrier, like it or not. No matter in what kind of color you want to wrap it, that's what it is. Whereas, and he derides that the other carriers have midlife crisis and things like that. But hey, if you can drive in a hot Corvette and get a new girlfriend, so.
Why not, right? Hey, that's part of the bonus there. But yeah, I guess looking at T-Mobile's results, again, I think there was no surprise really at their numbers. Again, they continue to drive strong postpaid smartphone growth. Prepaid growth was outstanding with their Metro PCS brand. Just strong traditional growth there. But I guess, is it becoming a surprise yet that they've been able to do this for such a long period of time? Because like they mentioned in their quarterly call, this is their basically the third year of being this Un-carrier initiative, and they seem to have really been able to show really strong growth over a extended period of time. Is it what they're doing right and what everyone else is doing wrong, or what's been their ability to kind of really continue this growth?
Well, they have been executing very, very well on the traditional wireless metrics, net adds, ARPU. They're working around that. It has come down a little bit, but we're there. I'm very impressed with their churn numbers. That historically has been the weak spot of T-Mobile, and they've really invested in their wireless network, and that shows in the numbers. I continue to I expect that to continue a while.
Okay.
Because, well, Sprint has to get their act, continues to need to get their act together. We'll see what their numbers are, but when you look at, when you have 3 out of 4 reporting, the fourth one isn't a real surprise, So, but it's mostly that both Verizon and AT&T are not playing T-Mobile's game anymore.
Yeah.
And the other thing that really continues, even after 3 years of excellent growth and a dramatic turnaround, is John and his team are benefiting from the dysfunction of the past, because the metrics were all relatively low, and with good execution, you can improve them, and they can continue to improve them. Profitability-wise, when you look at it, EBITDA margins, they're still nowhere near where Verizon and AT&T are. And if you're happy with lower margins, of course you can offer lower prices.
Yeah.
Everybody cooks with water here. There's no magic sauce that is being used. And so it's a function of that. And Wall Street is, because they're looking at the past, are pretty happy with the progress that T-Mobile is making, and they're improving steadily. Whereas, and they're still being, I think they're at the cusp of where T-Mobile is being rewarded on financial metrics. Mm-hmm. And in the end, Wall Street and investors want to be paid in dollars, not necessarily in, we got 3 more customers, 3,000, 300,000, 3 million customers. But what is it in dollars and cents? Verizon and AT&T have jumped that hurdle.
Yeah.
So both of them are optimizing their numbers on profitability. And both of them are making significant progress on that and there is where they get heaped a lot of scorn on, with lackluster subscriber growth numbers. But they're being rewarded on the financial metrics. So they're like, oh, fine, hump our leg, keep going.
Yeah.
If we get only a few customers, but we're making significant progress on profitability, by all means, Wall Street is happy with us, and that matters.
Yeah, that's a great point. It does seem like you're right. Like they are playing 2 different games at this point. You're right. AT&T and Verizon are playing that more forward-looking, more integrated, maybe broader reach package of IoT and video and things like that. Where you're right, it does seem like T-Mobile, and to a lesser extent, obviously Sprint, are playing the more traditional game now that they were playing at one time. And it's interesting because even when you listen to the quarterly conference calls, the analyst questions that they get, again for T-Mobile, there are different questions. Yeah, they're different questions than they get for the Verizon and AT&T guys. Those guys get the EBITDA margin questions and the, what's going to be financial impact, where T-Mobile gets the, hey, great growth and, lots of new customers and prepaid and that those kind of questions as well.
If you compare an analyst call from 5 or 10 years ago with today, you will see the parallels.
Yeah.
But, T-Mobile is on the right path.
Yeah.
It's executing extremely well. It's growing into that carrier who you reward and punish on financial performance.
Yeah.
But enjoy the moment in the sun. Well deserved. They're executing really, really well. But it's really 2 different games.
Yeah.
And Verizon wants to be that internet company that has wireless connectivity.
Yeah.
That privacy legislation or the privacy rules that the FCC has out there are extremely threatening to that business model because they rely on that integration, and Google sees that and others and are doing whatever they can to prevent that.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at AT&T, it's that fully integrated telecommunications video provider on all platforms and all transport. As you move from a T-Mobile strategy of being a Swiss arms merchant that enables everybody, Netflix, YouTube, whatever, 100 different sites, you're moving up to a Verizon that buys the over-the-top content, to AT&T that has its own, it's the biggest paid TV provider.
Yeah.
Execution risk goes up, potential reward goes up as well. So it will be very interesting, and there are a lot more moving parts for them. And how do they deliver it? But the opportunities are significantly more, but the threats are significantly more. It's a way more complicated business model.
Yeah.
And then you have Sprint.
Yeah, and then again, it does seem like too, I guess when it comes to Sprint, they seem to be at this point probably the only impediment to T-Mobile's continued whatever they've been doing. I mean, obviously at some point there'll be perhaps a plateauing of growth for T-Mobile, but it does seem like at this point, because Verizon and AT&T don't seem to be really targeting aggressively what T-Mobile's doing. I mean, they'll throw out some promotions here and there, but they're not really seemingly to go after that market. So it does seem like Sprint might be the only one who could really trip up T-Mobile's progress at this point, and if that ever happens.
Well, they're both the vying for the value leadership in the market.
Yeah.
And when you look at the heyday of Sprint 6-7 years ago, it coincided with T-Mobile, ironically, having the identity crisis and wanting to have high value customers. Yeah. High end, and Sprint saw it and executed on it. It got hairy when they stopped executing and finding the weaknesses in T-Mobile's positioning, and T-Mobile then, especially when Ledger came, yeah. Grabbing back that value leadership. And so Sprint is trying to do it, but thank God they stopped that 50% off thing, because yes, it's a great promotion, but the danger is when your existing base hears for months on end 50% off, they might watch the same commercial and say, "I want to have 50% off too," or "Do you want me to go for a month or so to another carrier and come back and get 50% off?" So you're devaluing your base. That's the biggest danger.
Yeah.
Now they have $37. They position it at $37.50 per person.
Yeah.
4 lines. That's what, $150 for 4?
Unlimited, yeah.
$37.50 is a really attractive offer.
Yeah.
I remember when the fighter brands broke below 40, and we were like, "Oh my God, world!" And now, a premium brand, one of the main brands, offers that kind of positioning, and we'll see what shows up in the numbers. It can't be really a massive success. Yeah.
You figure at some point Sprint's got to move off of that pricing model part of it and kind of do what T-Mobile did, which was value add. Bring up some new features that perhaps don't charge for, or some sort of way to kind of upsell people, maybe at a low price, but with some features that they actually want, not just promising low prices. Because like you said, that's a dangerous game to play. It's a short-term game. But if you want to get more long-term results, you have to be able to provide some value to the customers.
What really scares me is, they were on the right path of providing the fastest service in the industry, investing in their wide area network, 2.5 gig. And that changed early in the year. They have de-emphasized a lot of their CapEx for wide area, focusing more on small cells. But you don't get that and in a not very elegant way with their partner. You know, when you get your ear to the ground in the deployment world of where I spent some time, like a couple decades ago, still have my friends there. You know, you hear the grumbling.
Yeah.
And that's why I say for this year, I'm pretty optimistic for Sprint, but I'm pessimistic long term.
Yeah, it's gonna be tricky for them. Yeah, obviously. But I guess looking at the Verizon results and maybe lumping them with AT&T as well. I mean, again, I think we saw it seemed like a continuation of like what you talked about already. You know, they are focusing on different markets now. Obviously, the connected devices was big for AT&T. Verizon talked about it. They haven't really released a lot of numbers yet, but it seems like those kind of non-traditional segments are continue to be a big focus. Obviously, for AT&T, video is big. They have the Mexico expansion now. Verizon is doing FiOS into your backyard there too, in Boston as well. So they seem to be really moving outside of the traditional markets there.
Well, I don't view the Verizon FiOS expansion into Boston as a Verizon FiOS expansion into Boston. It's a smart city announcement, and the price they had to pay for that is the FiOS expansion. They had, 10 years time. I'm a very happy Verizon FiOS customer in the suburbs of Boston. Terrific service, rock solid connection. In almost 10 years, I had like 1 or 2 service calls. So great service, but I think the price they had to pay was this. Because I view Verizon, just look at the trend. They sold the Northeastern rural lines to Frontier. Yep. Now they sold the FiOS markets in Florida, Texas, California. Give it 5, 6, 7 years, and I think they will exit the Northeast wireline market too. And they have no strikes anymore then. It's somebody else's problem. Because it's the odd man out, and it fits with, it was very interesting. The special access letter that they wrote together with the trade association used to be named Comptel, Encompass, I think they're now.
Yep.
They basically said, sure, we're fine with Title II regulation if it has these and these caveats. And everybody was like, what happened here? Where in a typical Verizon move, the leader of the opposition turns into the spokesperson of the revolution. To the other. To me, it told me Verizon is not going to be a big seller of special access in the future.
Yep.
It's going to be a buyer of special access. So all the regulations that they were opposed to, because they think it will benefit going forward. And so, perfectly adapting to change in the marketplace. And
yeah, I mean, it kind of reminded me a bit of the whole, when there was the local number portability thing back, 10, 12 years ago now, when they were initially big opponents of it, they were fighting it, and then it seemed like one day they just flipped the switch and said, okay, we're for it, it's all good. And they grew like crazy after that. I mean, they took advantage of it.
Yeah, and it was, when I was still at Yankee Group, it was at my wireless carrier summit, and Denny was there as the keynote speaker, and he was always very kind, and whenever he spoke at one of my events, like a bombshell came out. He was like in the room and like, what happened there? But
yeah,
it worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what they seem to kind of always do, is really kind of look ahead and see where they want to be. And again, it does seem like you said, they are going to be exiting probably at some point the whole wireline market. And even it seemed like over the past week, there was some talk about they were showing off some of their 5G technology, it's for some analysts. And a lot of it seemed to be talk around using, that as their last mile, as their kind of their broadband product going forward. So, I mean, if that's going to be what their plan is, if they can have fiber, either their own to an extent, and then at some point going with fiber providers out there, and then just beaming wireless into a home. That's their play.
And look that they bought XO.
Yep.
What I see there is Verizon insourcing a lot of their fiber as much as they can, and providing their own backhaul to themselves and not selling it to anybody else, because they will need all of that backhaul. If all the traffic projections are right, they will need their own and some more.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and I guess maybe a quick talk on AT&T. Does it seem like, I mean, AT&T's numbers, and they even kind of admitted, outside of perhaps the DirecTV infusion of extra money and stuff, their numbers seemed a bit flat, perhaps overall, at the traditional wireline and wireless product. I mean, did they? I mean, obviously they're going through a big transition at this point. I mean, are they taking on too much at one time, or do you think this is just something they need to do and it'll work itself out through the system here at some point?
It will work it out in the system. What I looked at were the cost numbers.
Okay.
And the numbers that were or are under John Donovan's control, and they executed like clockwork. It's the top line numbers coming in that are where things still have to work themselves through the system. They had several reorgs earlier in the year. And so they are still having to reshape, and it's a normal merger situation where how you go to market is changing radically. There was this announcement that how they want to go to market with the video products from and over the top.
Yep.
Advertising supported to a Roku type model. Where the channel goes over a third-party box or like a whole channel setup, to the traditional satellite and set-top box model. But they're still working on getting all the rights there, and so in a way where they're in that model of putting it all together to become I look at it Netflix plus live type of model, but they still need all the rights, especially the live ones.
Yeah, I mean, and they do have NFL, which is a big package to have. But you're right, you need to have more than just football, I think, to really expand, to get the numbers. Obviously, it's always nice to have that, but you need a little more than that as well.
Yeah, what is football? September to February.
Yeah, 4 or 5 months there, pretty much. That's all you get. Yeah, there's 7 more months of the year you have to kind of worry about for people paying.
Exactly, and Verizon has been very clever locking up the NFL, NBA, NHL, all on exclusive under 7 inches.
Yeah.
So they know that live sports is a huge driver. My old friends at Nielsen came out with statistics a couple of weeks ago that 92 of the top 100 live watched programs were sports. Two-thirds is still of like dramas and sitcoms are still watched live, but 30 to 40% are on demand.
Yeah,
you have a Netflix type model. It's just newer content.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's really transforming. I'm looking towards 17 for AT&T to gel. They need the right offers.
Yeah,
and I think that will come in. Later on this year. I look for 17 to really that materialize.
Yeah, that makes sense too. Because again, I mean, they've done a little bit so far with trying to merge their wireless and their satellite together, DirecTV stuff together. But you're right, it is such a big company now and so many moving parts. But you're right, it does seem like a while to kind of get it all sorted. And obviously the reorg is going to have to work it through the system as well too. And so yeah, that seems to make sense. A 2017 timeframe for them to kind of really start to get their direction, I guess, a new direction. So yeah, 2016 could be a little difficult, but yeah, looking ahead to 2017.
The profitability numbers are bringing home the bacon.
Sure. Yeah.
The execution of the delivery engine that gives them the breathing room that where the front line needs to come together and come up with offers that weren't ever offered before.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, and that goes back to their focus on profitability, them and Verizon, that they do have a little bit of headroom there, that they can make these adjustments and not get hammered too rapidly from the market, because they are still making profits and their EBITDA margins are good. So
expanding profits, that's the key. And they're expanding into Mexico, and Carlos Slim can't like that.
That's going to be interesting how that plays out. Yeah, I mean, as they gain more momentum down there, to see what happens there with American Mobility, see if they get more aggressive or what kind of happens in the Mexican market.
Yeah, and the regulator in Mexico said that they have to come down under 50% market share. Yeah. They're still at 70% market share, or slightly below. So it's either then quasi-monopoly regulations, or they have to sell customers.
Yeah.
And who's going to buy it? I don't know.
It seems to me that, I mean, if they lose enough market share, well, I mean, they have to give up market share in Mexico. Perhaps he gets tired of being exclusively focused on Mexico, and maybe he goes after a U.S. carrier and tries to do a little end around AT&T, maybe. Well,
he's already the 5th largest provider in the U.S. with Trackphone. Yeah. It's going to be interesting what the new CEO of Trackphone will do, because as you know, FJ, wonderful man, passed away earlier this month, and he was really the heart and soul of that organization. He was sick for a while, but sorely missed. And my heart breaks. He was always a good friend to me, and
yeah, I mean, he was, you're right. He was, whenever you thought of Trackphone, he was, whenever I went to shows and met with them, he was always a great guy to talk to, and just always, he was so, like you said, the heart and soul of that organization. He was always pushing it and really grew the organization really well. I mean, almost under the radar to an extent, but really, you look at their numbers and you're like, oh my God, they got 20 million customers. I mean, how do they do that?
Well, that was FJ. FJ, smart, understated, quiet, but the sharpest guy in the room, Yeah. And he liked it that way. And that was that Trackphone too.
Yeah.
That silent executor that got underestimated for so long, but had massive impact and didn't look for glory and recognition. And
yeah. But I mean, even to hear,
big loss.
Yeah. I bet even to hear Verizon basically come out and say, "Hey, Trackphone is our prepaid product," that just shows the influence that Trackphone has in the market. I mean, they, one of the largest carriers just says, "Hey, let them do it. They know what they're doing. Let them do it."
Yeah, well, Trackphone and AT&T were very close for such a long time because of the 20-something% ownership stake that AT&T had in Group Cox. So
yeah,
I don't think it's all love and there anymore. So they focus more on Verizon, but I expect a little bit more from Verizon than to basically outsource their prepaid, because there's such a lot of opportunity in the prepaid space and in a Verizon branded prepaid offer that, oh, well, it's Trackphone. It's like, seriously? We know that they've struggled for such a long time. But I think, you can look at Sprint that has done a terrific, well, as much as we like on Sprint, but on the prepaid side for a long time, they did a fantastic job in segmenting the market.
Yeah.
T-Mobile is doing a great job segmenting the market, even especially with having both brands in the same store.
Yeah.
You see what AT&T has done with cricket now. That's their fighting brand.
Yep.
And you have an excellent company like Verizon, and they can't.
Does seem a little strange, right? They never really put a bunch of.
Strange.
Yeah, it's interesting how they've done that. But well, one thing I want to touch on too, maybe moving off the quarterly results subject there is, I know recently you've done a report with CTIA kind of looking at, again, the overall impact that the wireless industry has had on the U.S. economy, which I think, occasionally it'll be brought up here and there, but I think we tend to forget just how big this industry is and how much money it generates and the jobs and everything like that. I mean, maybe touch a bit about what you found with that report.
It really permeates everything in our lives now.
Yeah.
And, directly and through outsourcing, 4.6 million jobs depend directly on that, on the industry. It's significant.
Yeah.
When I look at the GDP contribution, it's $282 billion in GDP.
Yeah.
And that's up 44% in the last 3 years. I look back because this is the fourth report that I'm doing for CTIA on this topic. And so I'm looking back all the way to 2004. The US economy from 04 to 14 grew by 30%. And so wireless grew in the last 3 years by 44%. And over the last 10 years, it grew by over 300%. So yes, as much as the device changed in our hands and the networks have changed and the capabilities, the impact that it has on the industry overall has changed. Also, where previously we have imported many things from the rest of the world, we're now exporting. Apple is a prime example of that. But even more so, look at app stores.
Yeah.
The three meaningful app stores, the App Store from Apple, Google Play from Google, and yes, Microsoft's App Store. Every time somebody buys an app, and that can be somebody in Australia buying an app that was done in Lithuania, the guys on the West Coast get 30% cut.
It's amazing.
Because it's the American ingenuity and that connects it all. It has become that global underlying fabric that connects it all.
Yeah.
And over the last 3 years, it really grew significantly.
Yeah, I think your numbers show like it was like $36 billion I think in 2014 from the app economy, which is it's just crazy. I mean, that was something that wasn't even around 5 years ago. Yes. And here it is now, $36 billion market there.
Exactly. And all the while this economy has globalized.
Yeah.
Because when you look at it, the biggest app providers don't even reside in the US.
Yeah.
Candy Crush and other of the top billing apps are actually made somewhere else. But that hasn't stopped the industry from growing because, it grew very healthily here and we have a more diverse base. And the fabric that connects it all is here in the US.
Yeah.
I look at it in terms of value add because when you look at that phone, and let's take an iPhone, the parts of it and the labor is $200. The ingenuity and the marketing and the design make up the other $550 of value that stay in this country. That's why it's such a huge industry. And the carriers have grown at the same time, but it has really where it went away already 4 years ago when I looked at it. But when we looked 10 years ago, it was really, how should I say? It was like, it was a very carrier-centric model.
Yes.
Now it's a very consumer-centric model. The carrier is not dominating anything anymore. If at all, their power, the relative power has been eclipsed by the content providers. Look at what Netflix does to them in terms of regulation, or Google.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine how quickly that all changed, because you're right. 10 years ago in the industry, it was the carriers who controlled everything. They dictated all the rules, what your device is going to do. Walled gardens were everywhere, and that's just the way it was. And you're right. I mean, over the past, since then, it's just been this opening up, and now they're partners. If they're lucky, they're partners with these companies now. And a lot of times, the carriers are subservient now to these bigger entities now that are really driving this economy part of it for them. So
yeah, and look at the app economy. Yeah. It's completely separate from the carrier ecosphere. They don't even see what gets billed, Yeah. Because the billing relationship is direct with the consumer. They can do whatever they want to. It's open, and at the same time, they get regulated more than they've ever had in the past. So
yeah,
but the positive impact is greater than ever before.
Yeah, and I think nothing you bring up too. I know you always talk about the spectrum impact as well. I mean, we're in the middle of a spectrum auction again. We can't talk about it, of course, but there's a spectrum auction going on. But there's always, I know you've put out numbers in the past, kind of showing, for each megahertz or 10 megahertz of spectrum, the impact that has on the economy as well. That seems to just continue to grow and grow as well.
Yeah, and it very nicely puts it down to what really matters. Spectrum is really what drives this industry, and so I always looked at what impact do 10 megahertz of spectrum have. We had hyper growth over the last 4 years, and not a lot of spectrum coming online. So when we look over the last 4 years, GDP for every 10 megahertz that came online and was actually deployed, GDP increased by $24 billion. 1.6 million jobs. Government taxes and fees went up by 2.3 billion. Service provider revenue by more than 11. Device revenue went up by 19, and app and content sales. Especially over the last 4 years, where we have now widespread LTE networks and devices where you actually want to watch a video on, went up by 22 billion. Now, we can say, Roger, it's 4 years, this is hyper growth, this is not really sustainable. So I recalculated over the last 10 years, because that is 10-year growth is sustainable. And I think that's the minimum what we will see beforehand. Yeah. And even then, 10 megahertz of spectrum increases GDP by more than $3 billion. It gives you over 100,000 jobs every 10 megahertz. The government, in form of taxes and fees, gets another 590 million. The service providers get 2.6 billion. The device providers make another 1.6, and app providers, because we're stretching it over a longer time, also goes up by $1.6 billion. So it's all around a good story, and it highlights why we need more spectrum. Because I hope that this auction works out and we're getting a lot of spectrum and people actually deploy it rather than sit on it. Because when you auction off spectrum and they sit on it for 5 years, guess what? It's not creating one job.
Yeah.
When they just sit on, well, maybe one for a lawyer. But it's not the economic impact that we want.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does seem like obviously the carriers that are offering service and are buying the spectrum are being very aggressive. I mean, I think, this past week, I think we heard T-Mobile said they plan on rolling out the AWS-3 spectrum beginning next year. I mean, they're ready to get this stuff out there in the market. And then the companies that have bought spectrum, various entities who have just been sitting on it for decades now, so it seems. I mean, a lot of companies just sitting on it, and who knows what they're going to do. But yeah, you're right. That's just wasted. It's just sitting there wasting away.
It's wasting an American asset that can really improve the economy.
Yeah.
But the scary thing is that after this auction, there's nothing directly in the pipeline. Nothing.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting guess. I mean, I know there's been some work trying to do some stuff with the unlicensed spectrum and maybe some spectrum sharing, but you're right. There's nothing. Yeah, I mean, after this auction, there is no. That's kind of all we've got on the books right now. It looks like.
Senator Thune tried to put some teeth into the Mobile Now Act.
Yeah.
It got de-teethed a little bit.
Yeah.
But we still have another act of Congress that puts a little bit more muscle. Or we have the the Senate passed it. Now the House has to pass it. And then hopefully President Obama signs it. That puts a little bit more teeth and structure behind his commitment to get another 250 megahertz there. But we shouldn't stop there.
Yeah.
And
it's going to be, it has to be an ongoing process because, again, I think we all see it in our everyday lives. I mean, people aren't using mobile services any less. That's not happening. It's never going to happen. I mean, maybe it will happen. I can't see it ever happening where people are using less and less of their mobile, of wireless spectrum. So, you got to keep feeding that beast, or otherwise it chokes. It gets choked, and you can't do anything with it.
And because wireless is now integrated so widely in everything we do, not only as a consumer but also in businesses, that it really becomes the lifeblood of the economy.
Yeah.
When a plumber comes in, they get rerouted through their wireless device. Every job from high tech to low tech is being impacted and enhanced by wireless, and we need more of it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, again, it's a pretty interesting report. Again, I mean, it's just the numbers that are inside of that thing. And again, I know you've done these in the past, and every time I seem to look at it again, it always just kind of shakes you, but just kind of reminds you that, hey, it's a lot of numbers there, a lot of big numbers and growth. And it's just amazing to kind of see again what the impact it's had.
And it's like video. It's like going to the enterprise. I had a problem in my basement the other day, and the technician came, and he was a little bit puzzled too. And so he took his phone out and streamed the video to one of his colleagues and showed him, and got like instructions over the video stream of how he should solve that particular tricky problem. 5 years ago, he would have packed up and said, I have to send somebody else. Thank you.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you're right. Every time you see anybody who comes, or any sort of service industry, it's like, everybody's got, you go into a store nowadays and you're greeted by somebody who's got a tablet that they've got, and all your information is right there, and they can, tell you what you need and where you need to go. And it's all right there now.
Or somebody comes and repairs your fridge. The first thing they do is take a picture of it.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Whatever. The first time they do is take a picture of it with their cell phone and then send it so that it's documented that they didn't break your vase.
Yeah, it's amazing. Now, again, it's a really interesting report. I know. I think it's on the CTA website, also on the Recon Analytics website as well. I definitely recommend you guys check it out because, again, again, the numbers are always interesting. The numbers are very helpful. I mean, if you're putting reports together, the numbers you can use for that. I mean, it's always it's just insightful and very helpful information. But again, it's always good to see you guys put those numbers again, Roger. We definitely appreciate it. But again, we definitely appreciate the time again for talking about the results and the report as well. Thanks so much for the time on that today. It's always good to talk to you.
All right, thank you.
All right, and we'll talk again soon. And hey, thanks everyone again for watching this week's show, and make sure to check us out again next week. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.